Hi, this is Paul. What follows is a conversation that I had with Sam from the Transfigured channel on the Randos United channel and on Jacob's channel. It was streamed on both. And it started out with Sam streaming another video, but I had wanted to talk to him about his desire to talk to Gavin, and he had spoken quite a bit on his conversation with Luke about confessionalism and about some of the struggles that both he and Luke had in their churches, and that led then others jumped into the conversation eventually, and it led to a more freewheeling conversation. But I thought the conversation was good, and I thought it touched on a lot of important points. In some ways, it led up to the video that I released this morning about Gavin and sort of this idea of church doctrine as an immune system, and sort of the way to think about doctrine in the total life of the church. I think Sam's video invitation, I'd say, to talk with Gavin was a good one, and definitely see Sam's conversation with Luke about confessionalism and some of the ups and downs that they've had. Again, I'm not just doing this to sort of promote Sam's channel, although I'm happy to promote Sam's channel. I think actually this week I'm preaching on the first chapter of Colossians, and so wrestling with that very high Christology that you find in the song in the book of Colossians. So I wanted to bring this video onto my channel because I thought it was a good conversation, and I haven't been able to do a lot of live streaming lately. So that's what's coming for the rest of this video. So thanks for watching.
Since the apostolic time.
Well, hi, Paul.
Hey, Sam. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing good. I was trying to get this patriarch guy to come on my channel, but and he had said yes for a while, but then sort of ghosted me. And Andrew pointed out that he had been doing some interviews recently. So he is the Pope, basically, or the patriarch of the Assyrian Church of the East, which is a couple million people, mainly from like Iraq, Syria, Turkey, Iran, that are basically the Nestorians that got kicked out at the Council of Ephesus and have been their own church ever since and still exist despite being persecuted by basically every empire of the last 2,000 years. And in the 20th century, their capital was Chicago, Illinois. But they recently returned their capital, or their see, to Erbil in Iraq. Oh, oops. Sorry, meant to take this down. So what's up, Paul?
Oh, I just saw you here, and I wanted to talk to you, but I mean, my schedule's been so nuts, and let me just land. I just finished a Randos conversation, which was good. Hopefully that got recorded and everything. So, and, I watched your video with, trying to get Gavin Ortland to talk to you. And, I really loved your conversation with Luke about, about
Confessionalism and propositions and stuff.
Yeah. So I was hoping I could talk to you, and then I just finished this Randos conversation, and you were here, and I thought, I can just hop on and talk to Sam.
Yeah, Randos 2.0.
Yeah. So, I've done a lot of thinking about this. I mean, with your situation, it's so hard. I mean, someone like Gavin Ortland, who seems like just a really lovely guy, and I think you're right that he'd be a wonderful conversation partner. It's just, there's, for him and his channel, what does he have to gain from it? Now, if you were his personal friend, or, there's just got to be another way. And so, I don't know. So I felt for you, because Sam, I really appreciate you, and I appreciate so much about you in terms of your character, your knowledge, your heart, and I want to see you succeed and having the kinds of conversations you want. And I'm sure it's frustrating.
It is frustrating. And, some of it is pent up frustration from my recent experience with church and feeling like I didn't really get to have any of the conversations that I particularly wanted on my way out of the last one. And feel almost, some sort of need for like, all right, if they can't talk to me about what's going on, I got to find someone who can. And that this just isn't like this pressure on my everyday life is real. Like, I'm not making this up. And honestly, if anything, sometimes on YouTube, I probably downplay how hard it actually is. And like, someone was like, hey, Sam, why don't you go to, if you're worried about public schools, and like, I'm a little worried about public schools, but I'm currently on the school board, so I'm doing my best. But someone was like, well, if you ever got fed up with your public school, why don't you just send them to the local Christian school? I'm like, I can't go to the local Christian school. I literally can't send them to the local Christian school because parents have to sign a statement of faith. It's the same reason I didn't go to that Christian school when I was a kid. My parents tried to send me there, back when I was 3 or 4, and here I still am in the same conundrum. And this isn't made up. So I don't know. I feel like I was with the Gavin video. The idea was that I'd seen Gavin making these videos for a while, and it's like, hey, let's check the receipts on church history on some topic that the Catholic doctrine has evolved on over time, of which one could pick from a whole menu of choices on that one. And then making the point that it's not apostolic. I'm like, ooh, Gavin, you're leaving out a pretty big one there. So that, I don't know. That was sort of the point of that.
It's a good point. It's a good point. Hank and I actually talked today on the phone, and we talked about it a little bit.
Well, how many weeks does Hank call you on the phone? I get a call from Hank about 2 or 3 days a week.
I can't always pick up, but Hank does call regularly. But so I'm reading the De-Churched book right now, the one that's sort of going around. I haven't made too many videos on it. A little bit more will come out with my Sky Chitani video that comes out tomorrow. And obviously estuary for me is part of a response for the dilemma that church is for a lot of people. But it obviously isn't the whole answer. And to me, a case like yours is so, anybody who, I obviously haven't, I'm not your next door neighbor. I didn't go to grade school with you. So there are people who know you better than I am, but I watch people pretty carefully. And although I'm a pretty optimistic guy, I'll tolerate a lot of stuff and a lot of people. You have always seemed to me like a very genuine person. To me, it seems like you are who you present to be. And I met your father, and he seemed the same way. And it was lovely to meet your father, to sit next to him in Chicago.
The whole internet can be jealous that you and Jacob and my dad sat next to each other at an Italian restaurant and talked about speaking in tongues. And
yes.
The whole internet can wonder what that conversation was like and feel like they missed out.
So, and I had a wonderful conversation with someone who he comes to my church pretty much every week, drives a considerable distance. He watches all this stuff. He's another one of these people that works in techs and probably won't show his face on the internet or do a Randos conversation with me. But, and he's been coming to my church, and another autodidact, grew up in a church somewhere else in the country. His parents had split up. So, a lot of the usual stuff that we hear from many people that we talk to, and, comes every week to church. And I mean, to come to Living Stones is kind of a high commitment thing. It's not people.
You've got your own steep slope. It's a very different kind.
People always say they want authenticity. It's like, yeah, I'll show you authenticity. We'll see just how much authenticity you can stomach. As we had a great conversation Sunday lunch, we went out to lunch afterwards, and this whole issue of confessionality, because and I thought your and Luke's conversation really helped with this, because on one hand you need something that gives structure to the church through time, and confessions and doctrinal statements, propositions included, really do that and help with that. But they're of course not the full answer, because you can sit across the table from, theoretically a demon would have, excellent propositional statements and still be a demon. So
even the demons know that God is one or three in one, or what do the demons know? And
they're all clearly Trinitarians, Sam. Well, how would you doubt that? All the demons are Trinitarians, right? So to me, it's often been phrased the problem of wineskins, and the John 17 prayer that Christ's followers would be one. And so I don't have an answer for you, obviously, except I
think if there were an obvious answer, it would have presented itself by now.
It would have. Yeah. So this is clearly a burden you have to bear, but I just want to say I feel for you and I really respect you. And gosh, I wish I could do something for you, but I really don't know what to do. It just, often in ministry, you work with people who have a cross to bear, and by the peculiars of that cross, there's not a lot of, it's poor Simon of Cyrene. He dragged that sucker.
We all get given thorns in our flesh for one reason or another.
We do. So, and the fact that, even just with, the Christian school thing, there's just another angle to it. And so,
it does mean that I'm committed to my local public school come hell or high water.
Yeah. Well, and there are, I also often notice with crosses that there are other things just like that often bless the world. That God puts someone in a corner and makes them stay there in order to achieve something else that you can't see now. I know Luke listening to this will say I sound like John Piper, but I'll risk that.
Luke still likes John Piper. It's hard to actually get Luke to be too critical of John Piper even to this day.
Maybe that's why he's still my friend, Calvinist though I be. So
yeah. I thought that. Go ahead. I thought that was an interesting point that you were making, or someone made on your video about the orthodoxy thing, and you were sort of making it too. Is I've wondered about the intergenerational stability of the converts to orthodoxy. Because sort of like I said, I know way more Orthodox people who have the story that a lot of Catholics people tell too, about how they went to an evangelical church and it was like they found out who Jesus was for the first time, and all of this sort of dead, monotonous liturgy that just seemed boring and empty to them. Suddenly, the perspectival experience of Jesus in an evangelical megachurch captures their heart in a way that the icons and the smells and the bells and the liturgy never did. Yep. And that was my mom's story, like to a T.
Yep.
Too.
Yep. Yep.
And so I know way more people with that story than the in real life than the Pajot or Jay Dyer path into Orthodoxy.
Yeah.
And so I wonder what it's like for kids to grow up, if your parents are those sorts of burned out on evangelicalism, and then Pajot sort of shepherd them towards Orthodoxy. Will their kids feel the same attraction? Will their kids have the same knowledge of the Bible? Will their kids look at the liturgy and notice all of these details that are in it that aren't like explicit, but if you know your scriptures, you can pick up on? I don't know.
Yeah. No,
No, you go ahead.
No, I want to do the same thing, and for the same reasons. And it's just things right now. So I was listening to the Vervaeke talk with Theo Von. I'd never even heard of the guy. It's funny because I mentioned it to Jared, my son, and Benjamin, my youngest son. Benjamin's living back at home, and I mentioned Theo Von, and Ben's like, "Is he the guy with a mullet?" It's like, how do you know about these people? I don't know anything. But, Theo Von was talking about how he went to a mega church and, the music, and that's a powerful psychotechnology, I'll tell you.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. And I was hesitant to put out that video because, I'm not trying to stick my finger in the eye of the Orthodox who are so excited to have found, exactly what they're looking for. And I want to celebrate them, and I want to encourage them, and bless them with it. But I have seen exactly what you said. I was going to include that little clip, but I forgot at the end. That's what my experience has been too. I run into former Orthodox people in evangelical churches enough to have seen the pattern.
My wife was in a mother's group at Willow Creek Church that was run by a lady who had grown up in Russia and then came to the U.S. sometime in her life. I forget her exact story, and somehow ended up at a Willow Creek one Sunday, and boom, that sort of thing.
Sacramento is full of Russian and Ukrainian Pentecostals and evangelicals. And when there was a fight going on about gays or something, the Ukrainians and Russians were on the front line of the conservatives prosecuting that effort. And, of course, the diversity of Sacramento puts all sorts of progressive agendas in weird corners, because it's like when Prop 8, so the word was that it was Black African-American women that pushed Prop 8 over the edge. And then it's like, are you really going to attack Black women in public for this? No, we're just going to point at the white evangelicals and blame them for everything. Okay.
Yeah. But like in the, to mention logs in my own eye, I have no idea really very clearly at all what my intergenerational faith transmission plan is to my 3 kids. And I feel like at this point, I'm just sort of hoping that, it sort of works for them in this difficult, uncomfortable way that it's worked for me. And there's a church that's between about 45 minutes and an hour from me that is a former Way International Fellowship, basically, that has it's like halfway between what the Way International was, and they've also taken a lot of leadership and training classes from Bethel Redding. And so it's like it's like a mix of it's got the Way's doctrinal distinctives with the Bethel Redding's practice charismatic distinctives, and it's a strange brew, but it's actually growing and doing pretty well. But like an hour is a long way to drive when you've got 3 kids, and there's just Sundays where that just isn't feasible.
And especially when it comes to like midweek programming and things like that, distance still matters.
Yeah. Ironically, I probably can't play the piano because I couldn't make band practice. But propositionally, they'd let me.
If you come to Living Stones, you could play the piano. We don't have a pianist right now. We sing everything a cappella right now.
Well, I could always bug Mo and go to Mo's church, but I think Mo's got a similar steep slope in the way that you do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Although, like, I don't know, the church that I grew up in too, and this is also true of the Naperville church, it has all stripes and walks of life. And the way, because it had a pretty heavy evangelism thing. Like when I was watching Jesus Revolution, I was like, oh, this makes sense. This suddenly, now I get where all these people were coming from. And you would see them handing out tracts or brochures or stuff like that. They would go to like Venice Beach or whatever and pass out the little tracts to try and attract other people. And that sort of like really heavy, everybody should be doing an evangelism thing, not like full-blown Jehovah's Witness maybe, but pretty close to that end of the spectrum. When you do that really heavy evangelism thing, you get a lot of interesting folks. But you are finding the desperate, the lost, the unattached, and all of those sorts of things when you push the pedal on that. And so the church I was growing up with was my family was not quite average, not the average sort of family in that church. It was, it was 30, 40, sometimes maybe even 50% African American at times, and Hispanics and a whole bunch of everything else. And the church that I could go to that's kind of far away is also pretty similar.
Yeah. It's I mean, it's funny because if there's the one thing that I see again and again and again in this little corner and my little channel and all of this, it's the struggle with churches. People genuinely wanting something and having difficulty getting there. And as a pastor, that's especially hard because I pastor a place with a lot of empty chairs. But most of the people most of the people out there wouldn't fit or too far away. But that De-Churched book, The De-Churching of America, is that the name of it? I forget. But I just have the sense that a lot of this isn't really as it appears or as we imagine it to be. First of all, because everybody's an individual, and there's nobody like you in that book. Nobody like Luke in that book, and people are like that. So whenever you look,
I don't think any book has anyone quite like Luke in it, but
maybe I'll write a book someday, and then Luke will be in it. But and I've been thinking, after doing the Doug Wilson video and then the Sky Jatani video that I'll put out tomorrow, I've just been thinking about Christian culture or the impact on culture, and churches sort of by market necessity, of course, have to beat on that a lot, because a lot of what churches do is to try to activate dormant or nominal people into church life, which is a very legitimate thing. But I think sometimes we fail to see in some ways some of the blessings of Christians who are not attached in church and out there in the world. And I think churches sometimes, I don't think, give them their due. So, And speaking as one who has never, for the most unattached in church I have ever been was probably my missionary service, but I was still in church every Sunday. I was just in a different church because I was serving those churches. But I've been deeply attached to church all of my life. So I don't know.
Sometimes I go to my local mainline church on Sundays when schedule doesn't work out to go to the Biblical Unitarian Church that's far away. It's the church that my dad grew up in and that my grandparents went to. My grandparents' funerals were there, and it's a pastor who's been there for a long time. He knows exactly who I am as soon as I walk in. And, they don't care about theology, which is somewhat nice sometimes. And it's a liberal denomination, but the pastor's probably on the traditional conservative end of his denomination, but is still a little bit left of my comfort zone. And it's a little cringe, but also sometimes it's kind of nice. And,
What do they sing?
They have two services. They have a contemporary service where it's one of these churches that has more money than people. And they have a pretty nice, I'm pretty sure, hired contemporary worship band that is a little jazzy and edgier. It's not just like Willow Creek cloning, or contemporary Christian music, cargo culting. It's interesting. I'm like, okay. And then their traditional service is, hymnals and organ and a choir.
Interesting. But
I like the traditional service better.
They sing hymns. They sing traditional hymns.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. The serving the dying end of the greatest generation or the silent generation, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And it's pretty nice. They can do a nice service. But when you go to the contemporary one, I like double the nursery population. And the other kids in the nursery are the grandchildren of the pastor. That sort of thing. Yeah. So it's like, even that doesn't seem like a sustainable multi-generation option.
No.
But it's nice to at least be welcomed somewhere that knows who I am and doesn't mind that I'm there.
Yeah. Oh, Sam, I feel for you. Well, I think I'm going to make a video comparing Bethel to Doug Wilson's outfit.
Bethel McGrew or Bethel Redding?
Bethel Redding.
Just checking.
Which one is making American Christian again better? Yeah. Bethel Redding or Doug Wilson?
So what are your thoughts on Bethel Redding? I mean, you're pretty close. I assume you know way more about than I do, I bet.
Well, I never get to go there on a Sunday. I would love to really kind of go up there and poke around and meet people and ask questions. I mean, I would love to go up. I'd love to do that. Grim Grizz is like, raise some money, send me to Moscow. And I just thought, I want Grim Grizz going to Moscow and doing a report. I want that so bad. They won't have any idea.
Like one of those guys who has the stick and does the travel vlogging,
right.
Like that style of thing. That would be great.
Remember, Moscow, there is no agency. But I've read some of Bill Johnson's books. I know some pastors who have gone there for conferences and done some of their trainings. For a while, I haven't heard anything about this for a while, but Jesus, Jesus? I mean, they were going to plant a church in Sacramento in Midtown, which, I mean, Midtown is like post-college yuppie. That's the cool area of Sacramento where.
Is that where Joey lived?
That's where Joey, Jared lived there.
Yeah.
So, they were going to go there, and the other Midtown churches are kind of like, because the big church in Sacramento here is the Covenant Church, because there's Bayside up in the suburbs, and they've just plastered the city with their clones, and they're kind of the big church. So whenever they move into a neighborhood, there's this giant sucking sound because they have the hottest music and the hottest worship, and they do the contemporary stuff. But then when Redding is coming down, it's like, they might, but I haven't heard much. But they're an interesting outfit. So, I was actually reading on Wikipedia, and a couple of years ago, tragic story, there was a 2-year-old of one of the worship pastors who died, and the church sort of leaned into a full court prayer press for a resurrection of the child. And spoiler alert, didn't happen. And, and it's just, they're interesting, and then they're sincere, and they're steep slope. I mean, they're hardcore. and that's impressive in a way. You like to see people taking it seriously, but
you can criticize Bethel for a lot of things, but they actually do seem to believe what they do.
They do. And there's some anxiety. So Reading's about 90,000 people, so it's bigger than the 25,000 people of Moscow. And there's anxiety in Reading about the size of Bethel, because like Moscow but bigger, Bethel draws people from around the world to live there. But also like Moscow, in Bethel there is sort of a crust around the church of people who have left, and they haven't all slammed the door. Actually, there's a guy really very much in the corner who's he's been at meetups here in Sacramento, and he's pretty active on Twitter, and he follows everything very closely. He and his wife were both kids who their families moved to Reading for that church, and so they were and they're that's part of the reason I've seen, and not just with Orthodoxy, because I don't know, I haven't seen that long enough, but I've seen so many children of parents who were, had powerful conversion experiences and went to hardcore, intensive, take no prisoner, churches.
Well, that's what the way was.
Yeah.
The way was absolutely that.
Yep.
And it was, at its peak, it was like 200,000 or 300,000. So that's bigger than Bethel, or bigger than Doug Wilson's outfit.
But what's interesting about Bethel and Wilson is they're localized in a way.
Yeah.
And so then
the way was franchised.
And Doug Wilson comes out and says, they're going to make America Christian again. Might as well start with Moscow. There you go. Mm-hmm. Let's
the symbolism of the town name is just all backwards. Like, I think that's how you can tell that that's doomed to fail. Symbolism happens if your plan is to make America Christian again from Moscow. You see, it just doesn't sound. It just doesn't. You can't advertise it that way. That's how that you can tell that's not going to work. But it's sort of weird for me going to this church, because like the church I was growing up was charismatic. Like, we did the speaking in tongues and the interpretation and prophecy thing. And we believed in healing, and we would, pray for people's healing, but not any more than like kind of a standard evangelical church where you could put in a prayer request and everyone would pray for you that week. There's like this extra level kind of emphasis on healing that seems to come with the Bethel package.
Oh, yes.
That I'm still trying to make heads or tails of. And sometimes it seems flirtatious with prosperity gospel kind of things, but I'm not quite sure if that's really the right description.
No, they're in a weird way. They're now making the video that I'm supposed to make, but maybe it'll help if I talk it out first. It's sort of similar to Wilson's post-millennialism, because they're basically, if you read any of Bill Johnson's stuff, his argument is classic Pentecostal in that, well, this is very clearly what Christ intended his church to do. Now they add to it kind of an interesting oral tradition type element. They don't use that language, but it's, there's
anointings and blessings and this sort of, quasi-physical transmission of a thingy-majigger.
Well, and there's a technology to it. So I don't know if you've ever looked at, because they've got, they've written books too about how to do this. And, Fuller, back in the John Wimber days of the class of Signs and Wonders, I mean, that class was at Fuller intending to teach Fuller seminarians how to heal, how to have words of knowledge, how to do these things. And so, there's a very interesting technique aspect to it that, then there's this other thing about grave sucking or something like that goes on.
Yeah, there are all those weird fringe stories out of Bethel, and it's like, okay, did some some fringe person do a fringy thing once and now the whole thing is smeared with that, or how how central is that to what they're about, or if there's enough weird stories then, or I think they just have their openness dial set to like 11 on spiritual practice. And that lets in a lot of weird and interesting things.
I wonder if I can get the guy in the corner to, but people have families and relationships and their parents are still there. And, you got to be, I'm not about to blow up anybody's family on my channel. So, and he and his wife are by no means sort of vindictive, burned, they're clearly, well, here's the thing with the second generation, they're clearly,
That's funny. So you've listened to more Bill Johnson than I have. I've listened to 1 or 2 hours tops, all combined. Haven't read any books. Remnant Radio, which I like to listen to, talks about him sometimes, but I really don't know as much as I should, considering that I'm mostly going to a church that seems very downstream from him.
Yeah, but I think I don't know. I think there's a reason there are so many types of Beatles, and there's a reason there are so many types of Christians.
Yeah.
That God, in his generosity and openness, and God's also very strict. I mean, it's both are dialed up to, with him, but to me, I just find these movements endlessly fascinating, and especially when or someone like Doug Wilson, who on one hand seems so full of his mission, and especially being a post-mill, it's just like, wow. At least if you're a-mill, you can say, well, you can leave it undefined, but if you're post-mill, it's like, we have the truth. We are going to win. Richard Rowland in his conversation with Jonathan on the nationalism, universal history, when he just talks about, basically how many years from now when this percentage of America is Orthodox. And I thought, I don't know. Because
Islam seems to be winning that race.
Islam's growing. I mean, even that video where I have the numbers from Ready to Harvest, it's not small. But there's this funny dynamic that, and this is where, again, I've continued to think about secularism. Secularism does a fair amount of, don't say Jesus, smuggling, into America. It's going to be super interesting. Hulu had that show, Remy. The first season was the best. This young Muslim kid in North Jersey who is just trying to figure out his faith, and he's having sex with his Jewish girlfriend, and he's masturbating to porn, and he wants to be a serious Muslim, and his parents have just sort of checked out of Islam in many ways and just sort of checked into the American dream. And I just thought, oh, fascinating.
Yeah. I wonder what the retention rate of Islam and Hinduism really are. And I think that graph was interesting, but I suspect that there is a fair amount of, depth of the story that was missing from just those headline statistics. Honestly, what is relatively impressive is that evangelical Christianity was still, their retention rate was somewhere in the high 60s or low 70s or something like that.
Yeah.
And, if you have a good enough birth rate, a good enough conversion rate, and a retention rate like that, evangelicalism isn't going to die.
No. And it's hugely adaptable. And it's hugely, it just keeps adapting. It just keeps adapting, and there's so much of it, and it's a very living ecosystem. It's tough to beat an ecosystem if you're one thing. So anyway, so sorry to interrupt you checking out the Antioch and
I had the video up so that I didn't have to talk while I was waiting for someone to show up.
Oh, good. Oh, where are we on Jacob's channel now? Are we on your channel too, or just
We're on
Jacob's channel?
Jacob and Randos United. I've never
Oh,
live
okay.
streamed to my channel. I haven't set that up. I feel like I don't want to, I don't know, confuse my I sort of like that this is an extra level of distance from my channel, so that I feel like I don't have to perform when I'm just streaming to Jacob's channel, in quite the same way that I have to be at a certain standard for my own channel.
Interesting. Well, Sam, I did want to just catch you somehow and encourage you and tell you I'm praying for you. And yeah, and you do know that if you just, would just flip on this Trinity thing, all of these problems would go away. It might sound like I'm the devil tempting you, but
believe it or not, it's crossed my mind. Yeah.
But at the same time, I wouldn't want you to do anything that would violate your conscience. I wouldn't want you to take a step like that without it being authentic, if I dare use the word. But
no.
Anyway, I do love you, Sam, and I do very much respect you. And I'd love Gavin. I'd love Gavin to meet you just because it would make Gavin a better person. Frankly, I think he could use you more than you use him. So,
yeah.
But I don't know. So I did this video on Wilson. I've got this video coming out tomorrow on Sky Jatani. This conversation with Justin Brierley. I saw it the day after I did mine with Justin, and I thought, because I read, so I got an advanced copy of Justin's book, and big fan of Peterson and Holland. I mean, Justin's very much barking up the line of this corner. And I thought, what is Sky Jatani going to have to say about Jordan Peterson when he talks about this book? So
yeah. Hank is going to be pretty mad at you if you give too much platform airtime to Sky Jatani. Hank is not a fan.
Hank's a member. And he loved the video, so
okay, all right. So you must have been critical then.
but I don't. I really do think that portion of evangelicalism that's sort of hunkering down in the way that Sky Jatani is, they're putting themselves into a corner. I don't think they're gonna. I don't think that finally. If I thought it did, I'd probably stick with it. But obviously, I haven't. I've gone whatever direction I'm in now.
You're saying woke light evangelicalism doesn't seem to have a bright future?
I don't think so. I don't see how it can.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're just gonna be.
I know a lot of customers for that though.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
but like
it's just like the main line.
Well, yeah, it's millennials that the wife has started to go a little bit left, probably somewhat pushed and antagonized by Trump and other people's embrace of Trump, and that leading them to just sort of absorb New York Times NPR-ness. But still wanting to keep a Christian identity and wanting a church that, is willing to call out whatever label we can stick on Trump and the Christians who like him, and but still be authentic. There's at least where I'm from, I know a lot of people who fit into that category.
Oh, there's a lot of people in the CRC that fit into that category. Oh, look at this. But I think the collapse of the House of Woke, like the collapse of the Soviet Union, will be surprising and swift, because I live in a land which ostensibly is very woke, but I know a lot of people who swallow a lot in work meetings and politics meetings, and they just sit there quietly and it's just building and building and building and building, and one day it's just gonna slide. And that's actually my bigger concern, because I don't want to see that pendulum swing back hard. Because
if you were on the school board, you might feel differently. I am ready for that house of cards to collapse any day it wants to. Sooner the better, as far as I can tell. But I hear what you're saying.
It will come, and in some ways, when you look at, say, what's happening in places like Davis, California, which is just outside Sacramento, there's
big university town.
There's a lot of people that are just kind of they're getting their limits, and you watch a few people pop, people that were reliable Democratic voters for years, and they're just, Trump wasn't elected by accident. So Anyway, look at this. Now, how can I go make a video now?
You make videos at this time of night?
Well, it's puppy prison, so this is the only time I can make videos now.
But it looks way too dark in your office. Like every time almost all of your videos have sunlight in them.
Yeah, well, not the videos lately. and I've been talking to Daily Wire, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to keep doing my commentary on them either. So
why? What's going to change about that?
Well, they're only putting these things up temporarily.
So when they take them down, are they going to start copyright striking people?
Don't know.
Hey, Raj.
So I'm in talks with them, because I asked the question when I was in the first one, because I kind of wanted to know how much time I should put into it. And then they didn't get back to me. So I thought, why do they keep making them? And then today I get an email. Oh, yeah, you're still allowed to use 10 minutes from each. And it's like, I'm way past that.
Paul, I wanted to ask, when I think about Sam and a lot of topics that come up, I think about the Gravamen debate that's coming up. Are you going to address that? Does that keep popping up in your mind?
Yeah. I was thinking those are also some video candidates. It's just less fun than calling
culture war.
It's less fun than calling Doug Wilson a potato head with angry eyes. No, and it's serious. And I think the conservatives. Well, let me say this. A number of conservatives are imports from the PCA, and the PCA handled this issue totally differently. So in the CRC, you have difficulties, and the assumption behind difficulties is that you're going to pursue acceptance of the church position. PCA basically had exceptions. You could say, I'm with the church on 95%, but this 5%, I'm not here and I'm not moving. And the church said, okay, that's not the CRC. And so some of these conservatives,
they've joined because of that. Because they don't want the exception. They want the
maybe.
Yeah.
So it's that conversation is going to be. I don't think we're going to wrap that one up in one synod.
If really what the Calvinists need is a refresher of the sacrifice of Servetus to reunify the church around a new scapegoat, I can Gravamen some ideas that I have, and we'll see how that goes. And I'll unify every side against me, and you guys can keep.
I am not willing to scapegoat you, Sam. I'm sorry. I'm not going to platform that. Not going to happen.
Regarding Doug Wilson, he's up here too. Some of my neighbors go to a church that went all against the government during COVID. They got fined quite heavily. I think the church doors were locked. Anyways, they have a little academy, a little Christian academy, and the church exploded over COVID with people from everywhere. And they are part of this Doug Wilson thing. So
yeah. They're more little sprouts around the country of that. It's you can. I mean, YouTube shows it. You can grow a thing if it's hard line, bright line, counterculture. The difficulty is new lines keep emerging. So then that if people are sort of, if your whole group is kind of temperamentally reactive, there are always new things to react against. And so it's just hard to keep the splintering from keeping happening.
Yeah, we've got a number of ex-members who didn't like the way COVID was handled over there. So are you going to touch on the maybe the more technical side, like the Reconstructionist and like the history to that?
I haven't planned on it. I think, like I said in the video, the longer you hear Doug Wilson talk, the less attractive it all sounds. I mean, it's one thing to point to the California legislature and say, there's a bill doing this. Well, let me tell you about the California legislature. There's a lot of crazy bills, and some of them do get passed. But that's one way to attract a crowd. Now, you've got a whole program there, and living that out. I mean, one of the most funs we've had was Laura on the channel. It's in the membership area. Those conversations with her about there she is. Here's my little Ben-Op community. Here's my Bon-Op community. We're really hardcore. We have angry eyes. And
there's a few people like
done again and again.
Yeah. There's a few people in the corner that are like that from a serious thing. And you were saying, and looking and difficulties with church. So, and they have that in their past.
Yeah. Andrew, the student, living on Jacob's live streams.
Yes, sir. How's it been, Paul?
Doing good, Andrew. How are you? How are you, Trey? I don't have to talk when you're driving.
Trey's mad that
I've got to schedule another estuary meeting. My schedule. This puppy is just. I had to talk with my wife when she got home from school. I said, "Honey, I'm supportive and everything, but I can't change my schedule for the next year over this puppy."
So there's plenty of people at the estuary group who would love it if you brought the puppy along.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
but is there anyone who doesn't?
If it were just my puppy, this wouldn't be a big deal.
Okay.
Because my puppy can lick me, my puppy can do all these kinds of things. I can train the puppy how I want. This dog has to be trained to a particular program because I only have this dog for a year, and this dog's going to then go into intensive training, and it's like, and this place really hasn't trained me yet. And I'm with this puppy most of its waking hours. So the plan was the puppy was going to go to school, which I think is a great plan. But I'm looking at this and said to my wife, I don't know when this puppy's going to be ready for something as daunting as public school. And given the fact that my wife is already
in the deep end, Paul.
What did you say about the deep end? I didn't get it.
Just got to push the puppy in the deep end and see if he swims, right?
Yeah. So I don't know what's going to happen, but it's sort of thrown I like my routines, and my routines are just. So here I am at church at night. So I gotta schedule another estuary meeting. And I brought this really cool
you and I are going to need to.
What's
okay. I was telling Sam that he and I are going to need to have a conversation so I can better understand his stance in regard to his Unitarianism. Would that be the right way to phrase it?
I would love to talk to you, Raj. When I was hearing you talk about gurus, I was like, there's an interesting. Your gurology is almost the same as my Christology. And I was like,
Yeah, I'd be interested to know. I'd really like to know more about how you understand Jesus. So I'm gonna in the chat. I'm gonna send you my email if you don't mind.
Yeah,
And
go for it.
maybe. Okay, cool.
I would love to talk with you sometime, Raj. That would be
I
fascinating.
think you'll both find a lot, except Sam, you've only got one Jesus. He's got more than one guru.
Yeah, well, that was another thing in early Christianity that people don't like to talk about. There was a certain sect that is almost kind of Gnostic, but not kind of right in between the mainstream and Gnostic, that believed in multiple, like the Holy Spirit was like a person and then would possess people throughout history for multiple periods of time, and that Jesus was like the last and fullest, human that got possessed by the Holy Spirit. And that you see that's there, and it's like, is that biblical Unitarian, or is that just kind of something else? And that's it's there in the historical record of like the 2nd century. And so when I was hearing Raj talk about the gurus, I was like, that's what that reminds me of.
So in Guru Granth Sahib Ji, in the scripture, the human beings we call the Guru, don't actually refer to themselves as the Guru. They use a term called mahal, which means something like house and mansion. And so they refer to themselves as the first mansion and second mansion.
So they're the place where Guru comes down into.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Raj has got a lot of really interesting stuff. He really does. Mm-hmm. All right, y'all. I'm going to leave you. Or do you have a question? Did someone have something they wanted to say?
Yes. So Paul, in a YouTube way in the past, you said that you would have a game with Jehovah's Witnesses, where whenever they would knock on your door, you would play a game back and forth. And I'm wondering what questions you would ask them.
Well, I just poke around in their Christology usually.
Okay.
And in their eschatology, because I was curious how much of their own stuff they knew. And often, so you've got on Saturdays, it was sort of the foot soldiers would go out, and if they had like a little bit of training, and when they would hit something that they were getting nervous about, like they were starting to get in over their head, then they would sort of back away and say, well, we've got someone else we'd like to send to you. And it's like, I don't want to play this game too many hours a week. But I was just really curious, because a lot of Jehovah's Witnesses grew up in Trinitarian churches. And so just like Sam's point, that there's a lot of people in Trinitarian churches that they're not real good at explaining the Trinity. There's some people in non-Trinitarian churches that are not real good at explaining how their non-Trinitarian stuff works too. It's just that, so, and it would, because it's a Saturday morning and I'm cutting the grass or washing the car or something like that. And they come to the door and it's like, you wanted to talk to me, let's talk. And I have to be good. I don't want to be but I was nice and everything. It was always going to be a pleasant conversation. And then I would tell them I was a pastor, and that would even be like, well, we don't want to go there. Or they're like, oh, now maybe if we can land a pastor, all those kind of games.
I hooked the big one.
Yeah, hooked the big one.
I mean, usually pastors are the big ones, as a former Jehovah's Witness. So,
Yeah. So it was those kinds of things. And for me too, it wasn't just being a troll. I was just honestly curious about, just like I am always, I'm honestly curious about the people and their stories and what's sort of gone into their faith creation in terms of who they are now. So just always curious about that.
Honestly, Paul, I think you probably made most of these people's day, if I'm being honest.
I'm sure they probably
I think you did.
Not interested, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, there's a joke. Jehovah's Witnesses' faces are flatter than Kansas. And that's pretty true.
Yeah, I believe it. I believe it. Anyway.
Last question, Paul.
Yes, Fleebus.
You should do a live stream again someday. They're fun. You've been doing all these videos. I know. You got a whole list. There's no planning involved though. You just flick it on, take some questions.
But here's the problem. So, well, if I could do it at night, but my nights are getting full. I just did a Randos conversation tonight, and I still got sermon prep to do. And when I used to work nights, it was because there's a lot of meetings and stuff. So I often wind up working 2-3 nights a week anyway. So it's kind of like flipping to nights. I actually balance my work life a little bit better. If I start a live stream during the day, I just, don't know when I'm going to have to deal with that darn puppy.
Yeah.
When I'm going to have to, I could talk to people on the phone, or I can listen, like I've had some denominational Zoom things that I just, turn off the camera and listen to and can interject when I can. But
you could work at a tech company, Paul.
What's that?
You could work at a tech company.
But to do a live stream where I actually have to give people my attention when, now the dog is, doing this over here, and this dog is not allowed to do dog things because somebody's, this dog is supposed to be a very disciplined creature to help some poor unfortunate, make their life better.
What is this program this puppy is going to?
It's called Canine Companions.
Okay.
And so these don't become seeing eye dogs, but some of them become hearing dogs. And so my friend Rod has a sister with who's disabled. I think I told that story. And so she had one of these dogs, and she would just, when she has to get out of bed, she just calls the dog and says brace, and that dog just stiffens up. So then she can it's sort of a movable stool, and the dog can fetch things for her. And these are very disciplined, very well-trained dogs in the end.
Oh, you're talking like a steel dog. That's crazy. I didn't realize that.
Well, by basically November 2024, this dog will go into the serious training where there's professional dog trainers. But you've got to get the dog to a certain level of maturity, and you can't let the dog have bad habits, because about 50-60% of these dogs pass. But if the dog licks too much, if the dog chases a squirrel, if the dog, there's all these things that will disqualify the animal. And usually those things are because the puppy raisers kind of screwed up. And so we'd like to fulfill the mission so that some person has a good service dog. But what that means is you need someone who's going to actually put time and effort into this animal. And my wife was really excited about this because she had a student in her last round who was doing this. That dog failed, actually. But, she thought, and she's right, this would be a good thing for her class. Kids learn responsibility, all of those things. But this puppy but there's also rules, like in the public school, there always has to be someone 18 years or older with the dog. In most cases, that's going to be my wife, who's got 30 kids she's responsible for, and now this dog. And I'll tell you, when you're working with this dog takes all your attention. So I sat down with her tonight. I said, honey, I don't know if this plan's going to work, because this was your project, and I'm willing to support you, but I got a job too. and my job's pretty flexible. I can move a lot of things around, but I feel bad about what's happened to the Randos conversations. I feel bad about not doing live streams. I very much want to keep those things going, but
at least we're
in her classroom with the 30 students.
What's that?
Is she the only adult in the classroom with the 30 students?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, especially with a puppy. That's a lot. That's a lot.
And if she can, the kids are in 5th grade now, so they're old enough to begin to be able to do some things. And so there's potential there, but that's also tricky too, because, I bring, so a big part of it is, also the puppy isn't yet fully vaccinated. And so there are rules about restricting where I can take the dog yet. So I took the dog to coffee break, the women's Bible study, because I knew there's some hardcore dog lovers there too. But that was really good, because you've got to get the dog used to being amongst a lot of people and for the dog not to be distracted by those people. And so that's just a lot of experience with crowds and stores and classrooms, and the dog needs all that. And they can't really get that in training. So a big part of our job is to get the dog super socialized and super comfortable around people. And so ideally, if she can pull it off, having that dog in a classroom in a public school setting, if that dog can master that, mission accomplished. But we ain't there yet. So
no live streams, no Q&As, but at least we're doing all that awesome stuff behind the paywall, all that wild content that everyone's missing out on. I know you don't want to pitch it, but I think these guys aren't paying up.
I'm actually flirting with the idea of only doing Randos Conversations for at least the $3 a month membership level. I'm flirting with that idea. That would that would cause consternation. And it's not a money grab. One of the things that I've realized with this is it does demonstrate it. I mean, you see this in churches. You get a better community if people buy in, at least with some sort of thing. So I'm not ready to do that yet. I like having a really open thing because it brings a lot of interesting people who wouldn't. I mean, there's just some people who are just not going to sign up, give $3. Jacob, for one, not going to give $3 to Google, which is funny because if you're watching stuff on YouTube, you're giving plenty to Google. But so I don't know. It's all an experiment. The whole channel's an experiment.
Yeah, it's getting a little big.
Winnowing down.
What's that, Andrew?
Like you got to start winnowing down. You already got a ton of stuff on your plate. I bet your Randos stuff is already backed up.
Oh, you wouldn't believe my inbox.
So do the $3 whatever thing.
Yeah, the part of the problem is too that people contact me and they beg me and they tell me their story, and it's like, I really want to talk to them. So,
Oh, come on, you're killing me.
I know. I can't say no. It's probably high in openness.
Just that you'll prioritize the 3 month or the $3 a month folks. And then, like, every once in a while, a good enough email can get through too.
Andrew needs a student subsidy.
$3 a month. I mean, that's a pretty low bar, at least for
but it shows up on the credit card report, and the wife notices, and then you have to explain it.
I hear you, Sam.
Exactly.
I hear you.
And that is way more expensive than $3.
I completely understand. So you just tell her, honey, don't.
It's on ramping.
Well, the thing is, once you get $3, and then you're seeing the no wait, no ads people are getting, first crack at these things, then it's like, but it's only another $4. So, it's just.
Yeah. Vanderplay inflation.
Paul, I'm telling you, if you charge $3, right, you'll winnow some down, and then some smaller channels will pop up that'll do Randos Convos for free.
That was what this channel was originally for.
Yeah,
it was for DIY overflow Randos conversations from Paul.
It's true.
Here's a dirty little secret, which isn't really a secret. A lot of people don't watch Randos conversations because they're Randos, which is fine. But because my channel's a little larger, usually a Randos conversation will get between 500 and 1,500 views, depending on if I title it well, because I usually don't do much with a thumbnail. So a lot of people. So yeah, there's not a lot of people are not terribly interested in other people.
And at this point, your regular listeners know how to tell if it's a Randos conversation before they click.
And they know which kind of Randos conversations they like.
Yeah.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't watch them either, but they're like lower key, so you can listen in the background. I usually don't watch, and then it's really nice because sometimes it takes an hour to get to a real gem.
Yeah, true.
So I can see why people don't watch them, but listening, and if you have the time, it works.
Yeah. Well, and actually, if Justin Wells actually, makes this documentary, because he's mined the Randos conversations, there's a lot of gold in those hills, and a good documentarian, that could be a very powerful thing.
I sent him
Do you
some
know how far he is on
timestamps.
it?
Well,
Sorry.
Fleeta said,
Yeah, I sent him some timestamps, and then he goes, "Oh yeah, that girl's in my estuary." So I guess I'm
Yeah.
out of the loop.
Wait, who? Because I'm in Justin's estuary.
You'll have to figure it out.
What?
It's really good though. The names are left out of the convos though. I'm not gonna. I wouldn't even know the name.
Do you know how far Justin is into his documentary?
so I saw a lot of development, and then I haven't heard anything from him. So it could be that he got distracted or lost interest or got work or something like that. So I don't know.
Well,
It
the
may
school
never
year
see the light of day.
I hope
What?
it sees the light of day.
But from what I saw, he sent me some stuff that he had already done. And I thought, see, I'm always, much to Jacob's consternation, hope he's not watching, I'm always a little nervous about there being a whoosh with us, because whooshes are risky. And if Justin made a really hot, because the stuff we deal with here is, there's so much of the country that is dealing with this, and there's a lot of good stuff here that if it was packaged in just the right way, I could see it going viral.
Uh-huh.
And
That
I'm
would
not
be
sure
bad.
that would be good for me. I'm not sure that would be good for us.
So start charging $3.
But
Make some
if
money off
Justin
it.
makes this, it's going to be, it's going to be his documentary, and so he's going to make some money on it, hopefully. But if it goes viral, I mean, I don't want 1 million subscribers. What happened to Jordan Peterson is partly because this is what he wanted, but
But he did almost die.
Yeah. Well, and
Like literally, like some people say, that could kill you. Like it really did actually almost kill him.
what we're doing here is really nice. And it gets really hard to do this once you reach a certain level of fame. C.S. Lewis never really wanted to be famous, and he was fortunate in that just the way it scaled during his life, he never had to be bothered too much.
I'm a little surprised you still get as much rando interest. Like people, like this is pretty big exposure.
Well, there's a lot of elements to that. One of them is that you remember, what was the name of the guy? It was a Manosphere channel, and these women would call him, and he'd be like, he died.
Yeah, I don't know.
Kevin Samuels.
Yes. And it'd be like, why are women calling? You know exactly what he's going to say about you. Why are you calling? They like that attention. And so some of it is people have a need to be seen. Even if it's not terribly positive, they have a need to be seen. Another part of it is never underestimate how many people out there are just dying for a sympathetic, kind, listening ear. There's no end to that demand. And then to be seen as being heard, the real secret of Estuary is not the sharing, it's the listening. That people are listening to you. And that's huge. And to be seen as being listened to and therefore given value, especially if you're sort of, got a little bit of, the person you're talking to has a little bit of status, that's very powerful and even therapeutic for many people. And so that's why just having a randos channel isn't going to be the same. And it's too bad, but it's also part of the reason why churches do small groups, why the dynamics of fame are the way they are, and why people.
How is Estuary Inc. at large doing, do you feel?
I don't know what happens when John Van Donk can no longer do Elsnet. In my estuary, I should really be having more meetings. Josiah Gorder.
How often do you guys meet?
Once a month.
I feel like once a month is a pretty good tenure, but tenor. But
we've had some amazingly powerful estuary meetings. There are times when I just think, what a conversation. It's amazing the things people share. And it's amazing the support they're getting. I'm just blown away by almost after every estuary meeting, because we break down into groups of 6 to 8. And I'm just shocked at how good it is. But it also takes a lot.
Is it the way people come in, or is it the longevity of the thing that people are repeating? Because I run a small group, and it's like 1 in every 6 where it really, you're like, oh, that was a really good conversation, and it's taken years, with this, like a bunch of the same people to actually get to that point. But estuary seems more consistent. And is it is there regular strangers, or people just
there are regular
primed?
Strangers. I've never had 2 groups alike. Again, this is partly because it's my groups. There are always new people. And the protocol does really work well, especially for new people. And once a culture develops, it can be sustained. So it's been really good. And it's much better in person than on Zoom.
Way better.
Yeah, I believe that. I mean, just the sound thing. You can't even 2 people talk or whatever, the delay and
relationships develop. And in some ways, random people seem boring, but you would not believe what goes on, the strangeness of reality in everyday lives. It's amazing. I hear stories in estuary meetings that are just like, wow. And it's true. Just like, wow. Sometimes they're really cool. Sometimes they're painful. But amazing things. Life is amazing.
I think we're a weird group too.
Yeah, we do. There is a selection bias going on with us too.
I have no idea how I would describe what the selection bias is, though. I couldn't even begin to propositionalize what exactly it is that there is one, but I have no idea what it is.
No. I don't know. I don't know either.
Well, there's nothing going on up here. You got to talk to your pastor friends. I'm trying to think. Nate, is there a Nate up here?
Yeah, is Nate
Phoebus, where are you at?
near you?
Ontario, Canada.
Well, that's big.
Well,
Yeah. No,
that's
sorry. I was
live in
answering.
Texas.
I was answering Sam. I'm near Waterloo. Anyways, that's like I might be an hour and a half from Nate. I'm in between Nate and then who's the other guy? The other pastor you had on the channel.
I can't think of his name right now.
He's
David?
he's in Alliston. Yeah,
Oh,
so
yeah.
he's an hour the other way.
Yeah.
He was running one for a while, which I didn't realize, or trying to. I don't know.
Yeah. Nate Van Dennen is a gem. I knew his grandfather.
I've been reading his posts.
Yeah, Nate Van Dennen is a gem. I got to get him on the channel. Pastors are tough though because pastors put in a lot of hours.
Yeah.
And so, when pastors look at these groups, they very realistically say, because it's not just the time for the group meeting, how much other stuff pastors need, tiers of people need to get, it's like estuaries and little tidal pools. People need to get in other tidal pools with other healthy people. And pastors are always thinking about that.
Yeah.
So I'd love for more pastors to do it, but I understand why they don't. And my church is tiny. So that lets me do this.
Yours has got to be one of the smallest surviving ones, that's still running.
See, it's not the $3 a month that goes to Google. It's the people that watch the channel and give directly to Living Stones. That's why this church is still open.
Well, I would switch, but then I don't get access to the back end of the YouTube stuff.
A lot, by far the most money goes directly to Living Stones. It's not even close.
Yeah. Yeah. It's harder from Canada too. I have other commitments and then there's no receipts. And so anyways.
You guys have that huge tax burden.
What? What are you talking about? We're going to get rid of Trudeau. He's on the way out. No, I'm kidding. We don't pay for health insurance, Paul, so it equals out maybe.
State of California pays for my health insurance.
Okay.
My wife has great benefits. Those public employee unions in California.
Oh my goodness. Public school employees have in America, people think that Americans have bad health insurance, and your mileage varies. Public school employees have, I bet, some of the best health insurance of anyone on planet Earth.
See,
every year I fill out my taxes, and I get this statement about what this health insurance is costing the school district. I think last year it was $36,000 a year for our family. Livingstone's couldn't afford that.
Yeah. That's different than up here. The public employees have a good package, but Montessori would not be included.
Well, you're in a weird, your wife has a weird situation where it's a public Montessori. That seems like an oxymoron, but
public Waldorf.
A public Waldorf, yeah.
It's very unusual. But yeah, she's making more than me now. So
what are your thoughts on theosophany, Paul?
Rudolph
Just
Steiner
trying to get you in trouble in multiple angles.
That's right, Sam. The Lord sent you to me just to, keep me in hot water. I don't know a lot about it, truth be told. It isn't really followed in her school. They use a lot of Waldorf methods. There are a few teachers that are big into Rudolf Steiner, but many of those people are just kind of big into new agey ideas, and there's a lot of that in Northern California. So Rudolf Steiner's kind of like Jung, really interesting guy, brilliant, but kind of out there. But right about a lot of things in terms of, he saw what modernity was doing and very much made a curriculum to be anti-modern.
And he came up with an alternative to modernity that still kind of sticks around. Yeah, and he was even kind of Christian. Don't anyone get too mad at me for saying that either direction. But
it's just hard not to. Almost every option out there today is some version of Christian heresy, and you can decide which labels go where. But that's the state of things. Jesus just, and secularization just sort of steamrolled the world and seeded it with so much Christian stuff. So that, but there's lots of other interesting weeds in the garden too. So it's kind of the way everything is. But moderns tend to get a little jittery about the different anti-moderns that are around, and so especially for conservative Christians, then they start worrying about the demonic. So that's true of people that are worried about Jung. It's true of people that are worried about Steiner, and that just keeps going.
All right, I'm gonna shut this thing down at the top of the hour. So, and then Grim Grizz shows up right as I say that.
Grim Grizz.
I didn't hear you, Sam. I just heard there was a lot of weeds in the garden.
You are no weed, Grim Grizz. You are no weed.
Tumbleweed, maybe.
I desperately want to see. I wish I was independently wealthy because I would bankroll Grim Grizz first stopping at Moscow, Idaho, to get a sense of Doug Wilson and his thing, and then send him to Bethel Redding. Oh,
he'd fit in at Bethel Redding, I bet.
It's not. Neither of those seem off the path, but I have to make the eclipse in Bosque Del, Illinois, on April 8th, 2024.
Oh, really?
I'll be going to that eclipse somewhere in Illinois.
Oh, you will?
Yeah.
I
went to the last eclipse in Illinois. It was really good.
Well, see, in Bosque Del is where this eclipse is going to cross the path of the last eclipse. And that's where we're going to go.
So, and we'll have the great disappointment where nothing of astrological importance actually occurs.
Astrological importance, no, but what's going to happen at the Dollar General at Bosque Del is going to be very impressive. It may well shake the heavens. I don't know. Oh, look, I have a button here that says stream this to your audience.
Yeah, all right.
I was tempted to press that too. I might take this and throw this up on my channel just because it was so much fun.
Sure. All right. I have to head out, but I think there's enough of you inside here that have controls over the buttons where I can leave without the thing shutting down.
I do not have any control over the button.
I have no controls.
Nope.
Can I ask
Do you
one?
guys have
Andrew
an
does,
end
right?
stream button?
Welcome, everybody.
I don't have any of that.
I think
Yes.
somebody with superpowers should be around. Would you kick out Paul? Paul found his I can leave button.
But so Grizz, if you're streaming it to your channel, but do you have like the end stream button in the upper right?
No, I can't even highlight comments or anything, man. I can stop streaming to my own channel, maybe.
Can I like grant authority to someone? I don't
Nope.
even know.
No.
You got to settings, add the team and the email.
Oh, I don't know how to do that.
Yeah, it's good times.
Yeah, so Jacob needs to give out more admin seats. You see.
Yeah.
I hit a button and I disappeared.
It might just be over.
I think it might need to be over.
Didn't-
I have
Someone
one
could
Okay.
go ahead, person with one question.
So since you're a Unitarian, have you thought
Yeah.
about preaching against the Jehovah's Witnesses? Because I'm thinking if there's a group that you can steal, they'd be the biggest group.
You're right. In fact, the biblical Unitarian circles have a ton of ex-Jehovah's Witnesses. When you go to our gatherings, it's almost half are ex-Jehovah's Witnesses because we're some sort of safe haven that makes sense to them. So maybe we need to put more pressure on that than we are. But
I
it
think
seems,
so.
yeah.
34%. You thought
Hi there. Do you have superpowers over on the Randos United channel? Sam's trying to leave, and we need to find someone who does. If so, go over there and find the top of the link and get in here.
What you
I
have
want-
to do is put your memory on and remember who Jacob said he's going to kick off so that he can hand out new superpowers.
You
Well,
can,
so I mean, Paul could just start streaming too if he wants. Although I suspect Paul might want to go to bed at some point, and so
I got to go home before I go to bed. I was going to make a video. I'm not going to make a video because you all killed the video.
all right, well, just copy and paste.
Let's
this
make
one.
it
You already-
anyway, Paul. Sam, put Paul up there and let's start the video. What's the video about?
Well, here's the Make America Christian competition again. Bethel Church in Reading versus Doug Wilson's church in Moscow, Idaho. Which one's going to make America Christian again? Compare and contrast.
My first question is, which one is most likely to chase the moneylenders out of the temple?
Doug Wilson was saying way too many complimentary things about capitalism. He would let the moneylenders stay in there.
Yeah, but those Bethelites, they're pretty free market capitalists too. It's hard to find a really aggressive Christianity in America that doesn't like money.
Is it true that every Orthodox church has a gift shop?
What would the CRC
Icon store.
pastor know about
Icon
such
store.
a thing?
Yeah. Okay, Andrew, Icon Store. Is this what we're talking about here? About chasing moneylenders out or what?
Thanks, Haji.
You left the birds in. What can I say? What can I say?
Okay, so what is this Bethel group? I covered the Doug Wilson group as an adjunct professing today, but I know nothing about these Bethel people.
They're a much bigger deal than Doug Wilson. They're the ones that do signs and wonders.
They speak in tongues?
They speak in tongues.
That's
Is there
at
a
the mild
translation?
end of what they do.
That's the mild end. So go to their weekly
Snake handling?
No,
Not that. Maybe
Grave
they've
sucking.
maybe tried it, but I don't know.
Are they the
Grave
roll
sucking.
around on the floor filled with the fire of God types?
They go. Listen to this, Grim. They go to the graves of people in their church who were very powerful, and they lay on the graves to receive their spirit up from the ground.
Okay, now that's weird.
Kind of like the gurus, or it's a little. I don't mean to impine Sikhism, but they have something of that idea. But they also make a ton of music. Like some really high percentage of contemporary Christian music comes out of Bethel Reading too.
They're a
And
big,
so-
big
Do it,
deal.
John.
You should research them, Grizz. You would love them. So the upside if my channel got 1 million views and I became wealthy is that I could fund Grim Grizz and send him all over the world wherever I'd want to see him, investigate. Grim
The
Grizz
options are
investigates.
You can wield funding with your voice. You don't need to actually be fiscally responsible, Paul. But this notion of you giving up like a rando slot to people who pay you $3 is a little bit insane. Now, when you said you were turning the memberships on, you said anybody who does 25 gets a slot. So that you have to commit to because we'll accountability stalk you for saying it. But this
I did one
$3
tonight.
thing, you're going crazy. I mean,
Yeah, I did one tonight. So
you can grab a rando slot and then I'll do a talk with you for 25. I wouldn't do any other than those are the two options you ought to give, I think.
that's the way it is now. So maybe I'll keep it that way.
All right, CW, you take the big screen. Oh, John came in. Good.
Oh, it can.
Someone with powers is here.
It's
Well-
AM by me, so I'll check in later and end the stream. Oh, I guess Hezi is keeping it alive, but he's left us in our little boxes.
No, I think John came in and did that. Jonathan,
I'm getting
you're
the
the
man.
star of the show, and you have no camera on. So can you? That's much.
Ah,
Now we
okay.
can at least play tic-tac-toe. All right. Everybody get a piece of paper and write an X on one side and an O on another, and we'll get
Trey is Paul Lind. I'm the only one old enough to know that. Oh, Sandy should know it.
What'd you say?
I said Trey is Paul Lind.
Was that Hollywood Squares?
Hollywood
Yes.
Squares.
Yep.
How are you doing, CW?
I'm an old soul, so I know things like that.
I was saying that a lot of people find Randos conversations boring. I don't think anybody found your Randos conversation boring.
I found the
great.
sound unbearable. Can I get an edit with a corrected sound version on that one?
It's pretty
So
long.
quiet.
When's part 2?
Yeah, what's part 2?
Well, I explained earlier in the stream the puppy challenge. So,
See, I think you should call it puppy purgatory instead of puppy prison.
am I being purified by this puppy?
I think you should give the puppy a rando spot and actually do a thing with the puppy.
The puppy is supposed to be a very quiet puppy. He's not supposed to talk. And just the last couple of days, he's really found his voice, and that's troubling my wife. The puppy looks up at people and is recognized. If I bark at them, I get things. So it's like, well, that's not the program, puppy.
Well, since we have you here, Paul, I recall you not denying the invitation to play D&D with Nathan, Roland, and me.
No, maybe we can
And-
do it during the day because I can do that with the puppy.
I don't know that Richard's going to be able to do it during the day, but the fact that you have like this time window seems pretty gaming to me.
Oh, the one right now?
Yeah.
Oh, this is supposed to be work. See, I came on because I saw Sam, and I really felt bad for Sam with all of his drama with church and stuff. So I wanted to give him a little pastoral care, and then one thing led to another, and I'm still here, which is a problem that we all know in this little corner.
Fair enough. But that game has to happen. But if we have to wait till the puppy thing is over, or do it with the puppy, that'd be fine.
No, we do it with the puppy. Puppies, because the puppy just means I can't sit there and devote an hour of focused time to someone. I can do things while I'm keeping an eye on the puppy.
If those things include pretending to be a dwarf, we might be in good shape.
That doesn't sound unreasonable.
How are you doing, Sandy?
Good. How are you doing?
Great. I'm about 51 minutes from everybody loving me for 24 hours, so it's very exciting.
That's a long haul.
Happy birthday.
Yes, if you're in the East Coast or further, I can take it. Speaking of which, I have things to deal with in celebration now, so I'm going to bow out. Thanks, everybody.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Happy paganism.
I should bow out too and make a video. So,
What's the
Are you gonna make
topic?
your Tim Keller?
my Tim
eulogy,
Keller,
man?
that video takes real focused work. So keep bothering me about it, and I'll make it. Because actually, I should just make that one for the members because that's going to get a lot more personal.
Yeah, that's
You
what I was
should
gonna say. I assumed it has to do with the personal dimension that.
Yeah, I found Tim Keller at a very difficult time, and it was super helpful for me during that period. I listened to 2-3 hours of Tim Keller a day for a few years. And there's a lot of material out there. So I really,
You're unimpressed by his apartment and his wife, and actually spending time with him. You're like, take it or leave it.
that actually happened before I got into him.
Yeah, so you did that in the wrong order there, Paul.
It would have been totally different if I had been totally into him at that point. That was one of my colleagues had a hookup, and so we went to New York, and somebody else paid for it, and we had a great time, and we hung out with Tim and other members of his church staff. Got to ask some questions about church planting. Got to ask Tim question, and then went to his house, had Chinese food. It was great. It was fun, but I wasn't super into Tim Keller at that moment. About 6 months later, I was. And it had nothing to do with my time in New York.
Wow. So I always wanted to ask you, Paul, do you think that Jordan Peterson was miffed that you kind of like gamed the system to get that interview on your channel there? Or is this all just in my imagination? Because I imagine this thing where, like, because I heard the story where somebody gave you the slot, which was meant to be, I think, for his Patreon members or something. And so there's a sense in which, like, you know, you weren't even the person he was supposed to talk to, although I don't know, he would have even noticed that probably. But then I noticed in the video that it seemed like you didn't mention that you had recorded it until the very bitter end. And then you were like, oh, by the way, I had recorded this. Would it be okay if I put it on my channel? He's like, whatever. Do you think that that's part of the reason
I wanted
you haven't
to
seen him again?
Well, first of all, I didn't game the system, and I didn't know that the system had been gamed. The guy who did it confessed it to me about 2 years later.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
The second thing was, at that point, it was either going to be Skype or Google Hangouts, and whoever was running Jordan's thing had told me one thing, and then it was the other thing. So things weren't set up at all. So it was really odd. So the connection was bad, and it was really difficult, and I felt really bad. I didn't quite know how to. It was just totally difficult. The conversation went well, and so then I thought I should at least ask him. I felt badly that I asked him at the end, but it was just a crazy afternoon. And
almost broke the law in California, Paul.
Oh, I know. Well, if I hadn't asked him, I wouldn't have posted it.
Yeah.
What is going on here?
What is going on?
You need more admin seats.
Yeah, I would love more admin seats. Who wants to pay the $4,000 a year?
How much is the base StreamYard?
Okay, so up to 15 seats, which is what I'm paying, is $75 a month right now because I have all kinds of stuff. 16th seats is a minimum of $5,000 a year.
That's insane.
It's quite a
they know that when you hit a 16th seat, they have you by the short and curlies. That's why it would be nice if anybody else was willing to actually bump up their StreamYard, and Father Eric is actually paying for his own, but like there's only so much. Like if you guys want to give me the money, like I've been paying the for this entire thing. A few people have contributed, but like yeah, they want $4,000 more for a 16th admin.
You know, this is great to talk about the thing that you do need money for.
Oh, well, yeah. The reason Trey is here is because we incorporated a 501c3, and he's going to be attaching the PayPal accounts to the website. Fountain of Comfort.
You're gonna have to take that painting down behind you now, Jacob, and get.
No, that painting is there, but Matt is going to be making a Fountain of Comfort thing that's going to go in that empty space right there.
Okay.
But
that painting was gifted to you, Jacob.
This painting was gifted to Joyful Mother of Children Foundation. That which supposedly is running the Jerusalem event, but as far as I know, they haven't even started the 501c3 process.
I am leaving.
Oh, now he leaves.
Yeah, $4,000 would be nice to be able to give you, but I think I'm going to Israel, and that will be 2 months of income.
Yeah, that's why I've decided I'm probably not going to Israel, because I'm not going to waste my time and money on a tiny conference when I have actual work to do.
Paul, before you leave, I'm going to see Roy Clauser in October.
Really?
Would you like me to ask if he'll go on your channel?
Who's
Not to
Roy
put you
Cloud?
on the spot. Now you have to explain why you actually don't want to do it because
I'd be happy to have him on my channel.
And he
If
is.
you're there to help with the conversation, CW.
Oh,
Roy Clouser.
Who is he? Come on.
now you're trying to sabotage it by involving me because you know that I'll never do it. So.
Yeah,
Jacob knows all about things.
I know very well what CW is.
He's trying to get me to like do a running commentary on this medieval Jewish literature that was like a daily commitment, like indefinitely.
It's 5 minutes. It's 5 minutes.
Is this the
It's
podcast?
not even my religion. Like,
Well,
Exactly.
is it this guy? Where is he? Roy Clouser.
yeah, that's him.
Yeah, Roy
That's the
Clouser.
Cry
Philosophy.
of the little corner. It's not even my religion.
Yeah, that's him.
Oh, where is it? There, this
That
guy.
should be our motto. It's not even.
Oh, look.
Yeah.
He's even got a smaller beard than you. You can talk to this guy.
He's from New Jersey, Paul.
There it
Come
is.
on.
College of New Jersey. What's the College of New Jersey?
Philosophy?
He taught comparative religions there for like 30 years. College of it's funny because that's a euphemism for Princeton, but it's not Princeton. Just so you know.
Religious neutrality.
Oh,
The myth. Of religious-
okay. Dang it.
Yeah, so I went and talked to Paul on his channel, and he was very enthusiastic about the book. He's like, I love that book. It's like such a great book. And then I low-key asked him if he wanted to be in a reading group. He's like, I'm not taking any new projects at this
I
time.
read it like 15 years ago.
Paul, what happens to that essay you wrote on secularity as the daughter of Christianity?
That wasn't the full theme of the essay. I don't know what happened to it.
You submitted it somewhere and it's dead.
That was that Vervaeke book project that I think didn't ever come about.
Yeah, apparently nobody actually gets anything done when they're Calvinists.
John
Vervaeke's
Vervaeke
a
is a
Calvinist?
Calvinist now?
he got his part done.
Donovan Dunk's doing pretty good, you know?
He is?
John Vervaeke's got it going on.
Doug
does?
Wilson.
Doug Wilson. I think
Doug
I was thinking Doug Wilson's a better Messiah for you. It's much more aligned with your idea of Messiah. I think you should follow Doug Wilson now.
Doug Wilson.
That's blasphemy.
He is the smartest dumb man I have ever listened to.
There we go.
I say this over and over again. It's like amazing the stuff he doesn't know. For somebody as smart as him, like he's never heard of like secular Roman Catholic priests, apparently.
Collision,
Right.
the documentary about him and Christopher Hitchens and their book tour, is the first digital film I ever purchased. And somehow I still have access to it. So far it's working out. I don't know.
Okay, I am really leaving now. Oh, look at that. Fleetus has it too.
He's got the same edition you have. I've never seen that one.
For like 100 years, so.
I'm really leaving now, and I am not making a video. I have to set up the video for homeroom tomorrow. So Grim Grizz has another fun. Tomorrow's another fun video where I tee off on Sky Jatani.
Ooh.
He's not
Good,
even.
good.
He's
I
not
like
as much
adjunct
fun as-
professing. It saves me coming up with stuff on my own.
There you go. So, but I'm not going to make the video about comparing and contrasting Bethel with Doug Wilson's church. So that video may never get made.
Well, I hope you cover the Bethel thing anyway. I need to learn.
Oh,
You too.
Bye, everybody.
Hold on, Grim.
Yeah.
Grim Leverport, you did oh my gosh.
Grim didn't he didn't even let me talk to him because he knows he owes me $500.
Finally, I've been like telling you for months. I'm like, yo, get on your mans. And he's been like, oh, no. Like, that's on you, okay?
Yeah, exactly. I end up holding the bag. Like, yeah.
So